Nigel couldn't make it. I remember Rory said he could make it.
Don't do this whole... Phil, credit to the guy, he's always managed to do well. Yeah, but he is a shocking personality. You guys got a trophy? No.
It was pretty bit.
I like from Rashad Mendes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the LOC Report. We're back again and we are rapidly approaching the playoffs or bust portion of the year where obviously a lot of teams still vying for those playoff spots. For some teams, playoffs begin now in the sense that they cannot afford to lose anymore, but for the teams in the race, they also are in no way guaranteed. And one of those teams is Chris's team. And here is Chris, in fact. How's it going, Chris?
Hello, yeah, not bad. Not bad. Going reasonably well so far today. So, yeah.
That's what we like to hear.
Reviewing last week and various other things in between. So, yeah, should be good.
Excellent. So, yeah, we've got the stream going. If you are watching, I think we have at least one watcher. Please do comment along as we go. And, we'll just get straight to it then with the league news. So, for this week, we start off with the transactions, and we'll do no different this episode once I find them. Here we go. So, the man that, he must have had some... He may have been the most spent-on player in LOC history by this point. Naeem Hines finds yet another home for a high amount of money. He goes to Forge Flyers over Jared Goff for $20. Chris, you want to analyse this one for us?
You know what? I've got budget.
Exactly.
They got one hell of a run in terms of schedule. He may be the new Austin Eckler in that offense because I think that he definitely seems like that type of role. And yeah, he's scoring. So I mean, I think that a lot of people have rolled the dice and haven't got the results they wanted immediately. But I'm happy to hold on at this point. So I'm happy to get him in. And see how it goes. So say 20 at this point is perhaps a high number, but I had 40 left, and I don't think I'm going to end up spending that between now and the end of the year. So
well, this is it. Yeah, we're getting to the point of the season where if you miss on a few guys here and there, you're left with money, and if you're left with money, you've not been doing a great job as a GM because obviously that money is absolutely useless. Certainly once you're out of the playoffs. But come the end of the season as well. So use it while it means something. And no, I can't fault it. Especially with Jonathan Taylor faltering here and there, and they are a very run-heavy team. He almost does seem like the ultimate troll in the sense that he'll do this. He'll get picked up for masses of money, and then he'll be like, "Nah, you're right," until he gets dropped again, and then he'll do the same thing. This is the third time it feels like it's happened now.
Would not surprise me. Yes. Looking at that running, he plays Houston twice. So I mean, that to me is boing. I'm going for that. So.
Sure, indeed. And our other claim here, it's for a new player, but in a similar vein, shall we say. The other interesting one I picked up, Jameis Winston for Carson Wentz, $13, bucking the trend. We've obviously already seen one backup quarterback get snapped up instantly in Andy Dalton, and less said about that, the better. But this one by bucking the trend, $13 over Carson Wentz. Obviously, it sounds like Drew Brees is going to be out for at least 2 weeks. He plays Atlanta this week, maybe Denver the next week. I can't remember. What do you make of this one?
I think this could be the future, really, for New Orleans. I think that Drew Brees is done.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure, and I think that they
for the rest of the season. Like, you think they're turning the reins over here, or?
I think that they're going to, if this experiment works, and it's not going to be entirely Jameis and everything, I think it's going to be a bit of Taysom Hill in there as well. But they look to the future, and they have to. I think that Brees might retire in the off season.
Absolutely, yeah.
And quite rightly as well. So he hasn't looked like himself throughout the whole of this year, and obviously this injury.
I don't know. He's been absolutely fire the last month until. The game itself last weekend, and even then he only left because of injury. Right, I'm going to show you his stats right here, right now, because he has been slaying good defense after good defense. I agree at the start of the season he definitely was slow. I think maybe part of that was the COVID effects of not having an off season and whatnot. I feel like You saw a similar thing with Brady at the start with the Bucks, but really over the last few weeks he's going for nearly 300 in 2 games and 2 touchdowns, and then 4 touchdowns against the Bucks.
Yeah, I get it, but look, I don't think that. I think he's going to run off into the sunset, and they have to have a credible way of going into next season. I think what a good way of doing that than blooding these guys now. I think that Jameis could well be great in that offense if he's given the time.
See, I have a counter take to this. I agree with your thesis that it is this year or bust, riding off into the sunset either way for Drew Brees, but for different reasons, because their projected cap figure next year, they are something absolutely astronomically over the cap figure for next year. There is no way they're going to be able to field a competitive team probably for years. The amount of salary dumping they're going to have to do is very much, this is the window closing for the Saints. If they don't do it this year, they're done. But Jameis is only on a 1-year contract. I don't even think they would have the money at this stage to bring him back. You know who is under contract though? Taysom Hill, to your point.
This is it, right? This is why they're not going to go 100% with him, because they can snap them in and out. But for while Jameis is playing for them in this offense, in this system, if we're talking about just this pickup, then yeah, I think it's well worth it. And it could be that they sit Breeze for the rest of the year if it works, because, well, can they really afford to take a risk on an old and potentially injured QB who's going to have broken ribs for after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, when you've got 2 very, very high caliber QBs on the bench?
Mm-hmm. There you go then. So, yeah, we will see in short time how that pickup goes for bucking the trend. So we'll go straight to the last week recap then. Week 10, Chris, refresh my memory because I always forget. Marquee matchup, was it the Bears Bowl by any chance? I can't remember.
It was, yes.
There we go. Yep.
The last chance saloon.
Yep, here we go then. So the Bears Bowl marquee matchup of last week. Let's see how it went. In week 10, for the bare necessities, they were staring at 4-5. They picked up a win to keep their season going, but very much needed to keep the wins coming. Meanwhile, for UR Gold, in a tussle for the top spot, the Southampton division also needed to keep the wins coming. And UR Gold did take the Bear Bowl this time round with a 114 to 86 point victory, which leaves Bare Necessities now in playoffs or bust territory at 4-6. And UR Gold moved to 6-4. Looking down the lineup for UR Gold, Kyler Murray does what he's done all season, 32 points. Nick Chubb returned and was a shot in the arm for this team with 19. And then you've got guys like Adam Thielen with 16, Chris Boswell with 14, and the Bears defense with 13, bringing him along their way. For Bare Necessities, Josh Allen has returned to his early season form. He got 30 points, but amazingly, the only player joining double digits with Dalvin Cook at 11 was Cole Beasley with 17, and the Dolphins D also got 10 too, but was not enough for Bare Necessities. The history of this matchup all time is now 5-2 in favour of Ollie Gardner. And Ollie's team may be getting healthy at the exact right time.
It's certainly a division that's easy to take this year, I would say. And yeah, I mean, it does help that, the big shot in the arm of your first round pick coming back at this point is something that we've seen in the past. Really, really works. I think that it's necessary as well, because the early decent sledding that he had was when he had Murray and one running back that was good. And I think that obviously Murray's going to remain good. But, having Chubb in there and Drake as your number 2 is not going to hurt. And, Thielen's obviously your number 1, but Cup's going to have good days. Not always, but good days sometimes. Tim Patrick could be good if they can get it together there. And obviously the Bears D and Chris Boswell's at a high-scoring offense. So it's going to be good all year. But, yeah, I think they've definitely started something, a bit of momentum going now. All they need really is a couple more wins. I think that's going to get them across the line. while their necessities are, you just have to feel sorry for Dave, really, don't you? Sometimes, Josh Allen's been pretty good all year, but the one day that Dalvin Cook plays a decent defense and he comes up with 11 points, which is still very reputable, but it's not the 30 or 40 points that we've seen from the last couple of weeks, winning weeks. And I think that's probably where you see the supporting cast, or lack of, really, because I don't think Melvin Gordon's been quite as he expected him to be. Obviously Taylor's gone, very flat in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and yeah, I say, and you look at that without someone like Kelsey to give you that 10 points every week, it's quite difficult. But fair play playing Cole Beasley. I say he has to be one of the pickups of the year so far, because he's come out of nowhere, really come out of the doldrums, and he's a credible fantasy starter these days. Yeah,
he is. And on the one hand, I agree, you do feel bad, but on the other, if we do take a look back to draft day, which we don't usually do until we do the review show, but it does spring in the mind that my dad did have a bold strategy of going with those 4 rookie running backs this season. Jonathan Taylor obviously has worked in places, but then the others, well, DeAndre Swift obviously now isn't on his team, although he's coming good, it seems, and then the other two haven't really provided anything. And let's bring in Melvin Gordon into that as well, where his role was always a kind of a bit subject, and he's had his good games as well. But the heavy RB strategy, which has worked for a lot of teams in the past, seemingly hasn't worked too well for this time around. So, Ben Necessity is 4-6 now, and very much in the playoff mode now. But depending how Bed did in their game, we'll see if UR Gold reclaim the Southampton division or not. But next, we have bucking the trend against the Dream Team. Bucking the trend faced off against the Dream Team. The Dream Team coming into this one with a loss, but they still had a 2-game lead over the other teams in their division. If they picked up another win, they'd obviously retain that, but a loss would certainly open the window for them to be unseated. On the other side for Mike, 5-4 entering this one in the wildcard race. They need to keep up in the division and the wildcard race. And they took this one. Wasn't the best of games, 79-72. But both teams 6-4 now and coming in different ways. And both still squarely in the hunt for the playoffs. Looking down for Bucking Trend 2 has started again. Not as magical this time, but 19 points is an okay result. Wayne Gorman, that was a great plug-and-play option. 18 points right there. Josh Jacobs as well. He's obviously back 26 points. Not much else to speak of, though. For the other side, the Dream Team, they've got to be feeling a bit hard done by with the amazing games Russell Wilson had, and he only got 10 points, and it really did cost them here. Very much, I would say, the normal output from the rest of the team. Kareem Hunt got 13. J.D. McKissick, that was a good plug and play too, with 11, and Matt Prater with 16. But yeah, Russell Wilson really costing them here, and we'll see how much in a few weeks if it really does cost them. So the history of this matchup all time now, bucking the trend, are 2-1 against the Dream Team. It for the first time, probably since the start of the season, it's very much looking like the Dream Team were in danger of losing that division.
I can't believe it's happening to him again. It's happening to him again. I don't know what it is at the later part of the seasons. But yeah, Russell Wilson does bail him out a lot, and I think that's the difference here. Mike's team on the other side, he's done very well picking up Wayne Gorman, because I think that's got him across the line in the end. Mm-hmm. And playing Tua again is bold. Playing Gorman's good off the waivers. Josh Jacobs has obviously propelled himself. But you sort of expect that from your number 1 pick. But otherwise, as you say, nothing really to rhyme about. That's it. Obviously Anderson, Metcalf, Fournette. That's it. All had bad weeks. Whilst with Viv, it's it. Kareem Hunt's still doing his thing, despite the fact he's now sharing time. How long that will last, who knows? We keep saying that. Godwin had some decent yardage. McKissick was, to be fair, great. And they'd say if we're playing PPR, he's a PPR monster. But we're not doing that. And but even so, that's still excellent for for a guy off the waivers. And obviously 16 points from your kicker doesn't hurt. But, yeah, you would expect a guy like Russell Wilson playing in Los Angeles in that particular game anyway to be scoring certainly more than 9 points. But, yeah, he didn't have a great game at all. And yeah, that's cost Viv in turn, and I think you look at the bench, you don't see a great deal there. Obviously, you could have played. I don't think you'd have played David Harris against Baltimore anyway. But
no,
you may have played the Browns D, may have played the Browns D against Houston. But I don't think we can knock him for that. So yeah, in the end, it's just a bit of a scummy in the mud game, where the difference really is a couple of skill players, and that's gone to Mike for having Josh Jacobs, who's gone off on the day and not gone Viv's way for his QB really, and that's all we can say about this game. It's often down to the finest of margins, and I hope that's not something like we saw last year with Phil, where you can look back at the end of the year and go, if you just won that game, then your path would have been different.
For sure.
But this is obviously quite different to that in the sense that it's one player that's let him down, and I don't say Mike's got away with one, but he's certainly been rewarded for his waiver playing. Yeah,
I think to be fair to Mike, the score that he put up would have beaten, just quick math, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He would have beaten half of the league with this score this week. So I think you have to look across I don't think you could say 79 points as a bar, across the season isn't representative. But for the week, for sure, if you're beating half the league, then you can say that's a good score, or an acceptable score. I think it's fair to say. And this week, obviously, that was the case. So and depending on what happened elsewhere, bucking the trend could potentially have snatched the wild card. But we'll come back to that in the standings later. So we'll go to the next game, though, and it was the Podcast Bowl, Gridiron Gang against Forge Flyers. The Podcast Bowl, the one that the hosts here circle every year, happened in week 10, and for Gridiron Gang, it was very much, they got the win they needed the week before, and they needed to keep them coming to have a firm stake in the playoff race, shall we say. And then for Forge Flyers on the other side, leading a division, but with two teams hot on their tail, needing to keep the wins coming as well. And it was another low scorer, but a close one, like the game before, 73-62 in favour of Forge Flyers. So looking down the lineups, Goff, he didn't have a great day either in that Seattle Rams game, but he got 10 points. Derrick Henry had 11 points as well. Terry McLaurin with 10, and the special teams combining for 30 between Ryan Suckup and the Steelers, 17-13 apiece. On the other side of the ball, only the kicker and the defense got above 10 points. Lutz got 10, the Saints D got 18, and you have to say the big storyline of this one was Drew Brees obviously leaving the game. He only got 9 points. Could have been the difference had he played, but as it is, Gridiron Gang does lose it. And they're 4-6 now. They're not quite out of it, but they, like bare necessities, they are playoff or bust at this point. Meanwhile, Forge Flyers stays a win ahead in their division. The history of this game all time is not 10-9 in favour of Gridiron Gang. In the context of other games we've looked at so far, an important game for you to win, Chris.
Yes, I agree. This is another one of one which I think I would say it's lucky, this one here. I mean, I think I've got away with one here that I tried to be clever and play Jared Goff in a good matchup, and obviously that's blown up in my face a little bit. 10 points is not good, but yes, it helps that your quarterback didn't do anything either and got injured. But throughout the rest of the team, I say yes, you're right. The special teams is a big part of this, and 30 points out of a 72-point haul is a lot. Bearing in mind that Ryan Suckup's the highest scoring skill player, and that you see three guys there, Connor Williams and Kirk, who all combined for less than 10 nearly. So it's not an unbelievably rosy situation. However, there are shoots of positivity on the bench. Obviously, I've benched Lamar the last couple of weeks, really unnecessarily, really. And DJ Moore is just very frustrating. Whilst for you, again, so I think it's the same sort of thing. Is that there's a lot of big time players who are big time on their day, but when it's not their day, you look there. Lockett, Fuller, Brown, Davis, and Woods. Those guys you've seen them have excellent weeks. And to be fair, Woods had a good matchup. Fuller had a reasonably good matchup, albeit in bad weather. And Lockett, Brown, Davis didn't really do a great deal in their toughens, but it is what it is. Your special teams had a good day as well, and as you say, it could have been changed by the special teams. But yours, you do have a lot of positivity because you do, I think, have a number one running back on your bench, and DeAndre Swift is going to be that guy now going forward. I think they're going to lean on him a lot, playing him will obviously be the difference this week, but I think it's going to be the difference between you and wins in other weeks going forward.
Yeah, and I'm glad you hit on that because this one was a real bitter pill for me to swallow, and I'm never upset about losing a podcast bowl because we obviously do the podcast every week, and it's a very friendly matchup. But I mean, gosh, what word with my team was 1 win puts me right back in it. Your team hasn't had the best of days. It's a very winnable matchup, and then, as you say, my team just hasn't had the goods, and in a way it felt like everything was conspiring against me on the day. You had Mike Davis dislocate his finger and not really get it going. Antonio Brown, Brady misses a deep shot, and seemingly everyone else is catching a touchdown. You had that horrendous weather in the Cleveland Texans game, and then Woods and Lockett in what profiled to be an absolute shootout in probably the run heaviest game you will see all day on the weekend, and then Breeze getting injured as well. It was just everything went wrong for me in this one. And as you correctly pointed to, about half an hour before the game's kicked off, I get a notification from the Fantasy Life app saying that DeAndre Swift will be treated as the featured back. He is getting his first official on paper start. And obviously you see that so many times and it's utterly meaningless, and they still carry on as they were, and then that happens. I was never going to put him in, just based off of that, so I'm not lamenting or anything like that. And as you say, I think with him, and I still think the team is good going forward, this is probably the most confident I've felt about my team in recent years, but just a bitter game for me to lose here. But obviously, well done getting the win, and arguably, as you say, you have Jackson in there, and possibly more as well. You're having a nice day, so I was fortunate to even have a chance to be even in this game. But Forge Friars press on, still have a league best record now. They stand alone at 7-3. Meanwhile, Gridiron Gang still searching. They're in playoff or bust right now. Our next game then, it's Mahomes under the hammer against Bedednators. Ross's team and the name that accompanies it faced Bedetonators in Week 10. Bedetonators had a loose hold on the division. They got a win last week and still tied on record entering this one with your gold, but needed to keep the wins coming to maintain that. Meanwhile, for Ross's team, they've been on a bit of a slide. Very much one of the teams who needed a win to still have a good stake in the playoff race, and a win they did get. 125-50. Both teams at 5-5 now, and Bedetonators lose the division for 1 week, and Ross maintains his race in the playoffs. Looking down the lineup, Aaron Rodgers, he's been great all year long, 29 points for him. Evans got 14, Diggs with 15, Kamara, he's back with 28 points, and Tyler Bass just loves scoring points against Bedetonators. He got 18 points. And speaking of Bedetonators, Deshaun Watson in that horrible weather game obviously didn't do too great, but 16, I think all things considered, not bad. James Robinson had an okay day with 11, but nothing else there. And tactical retention of the kicker in a game they were never competing in, so we'll ignore the 0 for the purposes of that. But just a very bad week with lots of buys, and they did have Ronald Jones and T. Higgins in the bench, but it still wouldn't have made a difference despite that. So, history of this matchup all time, Ross is now 6-4 against Bedetonators. And Bedetonators are going to have to bounce back pretty quickly if they want to win that division.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the widest points margins I think we've had for some time. It's not unbelievably good for Ollie. I mean, yes, he's got some guys in tough matchups there, and it's got a lot of streaky starts, I would say, that obviously hasn't come off. So, not what you can say about a 50-point week, apart from, that's it, it can really only get better from there. And it will. Because once he gets his Falcons back, once he gets his first round pick back, once he starts believing in Ronald Jones again, as the Bucks seem to be, then yeah, I think he'll be okay. On the other side, what can you say about this team? This team every week has pretty much been there or thereabouts in their games, and I think it does help when you have, when you have like Rodgers, Jones, Evans, Kamara. It's it. I mean, it is a very, very well also drafted team, as I keep saying. But Ross is doing what he's doing with it. He's not changing much. He doesn't need to. But you do sometimes have to go with the form that some people are in. I look at MVS on the bench, and I know earlier on in the season we're going, why is he not playing? But the last 2 weeks, he's been fantastic. Last week was probably the indicator that he was going to do something, and then this week he's gone off again. So perhaps it's time to start him more regularly. But he has got a few tougher matchups coming up. So maybe rolling with the two New Orleans running backs at the moment, especially with.
Yeah, he's done that all season long. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I can't quite fathom as to why, but I sort of get the tactic. Is that if Murray's going to get the yards and then gets a touchdown, then maybe it's worth it. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's worth it at the moment with the QB in flux. But yeah, up to this point, I don't really know. But yeah, reliable, solid players, doing their thing, scoring the points. 125 points is obviously fantastic in a week that wasn't a high-scoring week for anybody. And yeah, Ross keeps on chugging. But yeah, Ollie is needing those receivers back in a big way.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, as you said, Ross, highest score on the week, and only one other team, your Gold, went over 100 points. So yeah, definitely a good week, but by league standards. And I think we need to start getting a viewer to track our picks each week and see how we do throughout the season, because we basically literally predicted this, obviously not as badly for Ollie, but we said with those matchups and whatnot for Ross that he was in store for a boom week and Ollie would struggle, and we absolutely nailed it on this one. So
I'm interested to see across the course of the year, yeah, see what we pick is our picks.
Yeah.
And see if they go away, because yeah, you can pretty much predict you can predict matchups mostly, obviously 4 days before or whatever. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if it ever comes off.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Anyone's out there that really got nothing to do, then by all means do it.
Yeah, I'm sure Mike has been checking in every week for the past few weeks, and we appreciate that, Mike. So maybe that job can fall to him next season. As the newest member to the league. Yeah, our next game then, Tom's Tyrants against the Tuckfarts. Tom's Tyrants on a 4-game surge, the new hottest team in the LOC, looking to keep it going against the Tuckfarts in the exact opposite seat. They were on a 4-game slide, but the coach was back in the room, at least now. But it did unfortunately not pan through to the results. A better week from the Tuckfarts of 74, but Tom's Tyrants comfortably swept them aside with 97. Looking down the lineup, Justin Herbert continues to fire. He got 24 points for Tom's Tyrants. Miles Sanders, he's back. He got 12. Antonio Gibson, great day, 19 points. And Devontae Adams, 11. And the Buccaneers D as well, 12. So another strong team effort from Tom's Tyrants. For the Tuckfarts, Teddy Bridgewater was a 1-week spot in for Mahomes on a bye, and he fielded admirably with 23 points. Hopkins, obviously, with that ridiculous catch and triple coverage to win the game. 19 points there. Juju Smith-Schuster with 14 points, and Dan Carlson, the Las Vegas kicker, with 15. But obviously not enough. Tom's Tyrants 5-5, and they are making one of the all-time comebacks if they pull this one off in their playoffs. Meanwhile, Tuckfarts, 5-game slide now, and they are at 3-7. History of this matchup all-time: Tom's Tyrants are 9-10 against Phil. If Tom pulls this off, and he's only one win out of either the division or the wildcard spot, just wow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, say from the depths of nowhere. I mean, this is like Ollie's run a couple of years ago, where no one really saw it coming until it was too late. And it's going to keep on trucking because there's a lot of things to like. He's got probably the best QB tandem in the league. With Herbert and Brady, so it doesn't really matter who he plays week in, week out. He's going to get some joy there. as we keep saying, Keenan Allen and Devontae Adams, as a 1 and 2, receiving core, absolutely fantastic at the moment. You can't really knock the consistency that they're producing. Obviously Sanders being his number 1 pick, but can we talk about Antonio Gibson for a moment, who does really represent some phenomenal draft value. If this is the guy now that's going to be the number 1 in that offense, especially with Alex Smith under center, who's going to be the focal point. It's got to be, because we know what Alex Smith does. He doesn't like to go long, so he likes to hand it off. Game manage. And I think that he's going to be a real beneficiary of that. Kick a D, all nice and solid, and then you got one position where you can trade in and out. This week's Allen Robinson. He's been okay, but not great throughout this year. But then that's because of his QB under center, really. Which, both of them are trash. So, on the other side, I think we could probably put a fork in Phil at this point. I'm not going to quite go as far as saying it's official, but we'll go with it for now. Unhelpful dud from AJ Green. Singletary has not been the guy that he drafted. He drops Claypool for 1 week and goes for 17 points. So that's pretty much where you're at this year. Seems to really love Emmanuel Sanders despite him not really doing anything apart from getting COVID and sitting on the bench. But Smith-Schuster seems to be getting back in there, albeit they've got quite a lot of mouths to feed in that offense now. Hopkins, that was a ridiculous catch. Oh my god! And you put Mahomes back in the mix there. And if he can get his team right, I'm pretty sure he can get a couple more wins, because Mahomes will just be able to propel him to those sort of levels. But he has to get it right and has to be engaged, and I think that's the difference between that winning that division or certainly being competitive in that division and not, because he's not that far away. But one more week of slipping away, I think that's pretty much him done.
Well, at this point, he is 3 games behind in both the wild card and the division. You got to figure that the wild card would at least be 7 wins, so that's winning all your games. The division, as you said, it's not necessarily the best of teams around him, so possibly, but it's certainly looking the season is over at this point. So our last game of the week then was Iksan against Pakistan. Iksan entered this game holding the wildcard spot, but after a 2-game losing streak, that was in very, very much peril. Meanwhile, Pakistan, they've been a team that's flattered to deceive at times. At 3-6, they obviously had a must-win. Playoffs begun last week. The week they played for them, and they did get the win they needed, 94-58. Looking down the lineups for Pakistan, Ben Roethlisberger, he's been a good fill-in for them. 37 points on the day. Deontay Johnson, his obviously receiver, also with 18 points, and then Justin Jefferson, he's been a great pickup for Pat, 14 points, and the Colts D2, they got 14 as well, so a pretty good team day for Pat. On the other side of the ball for Iksan, the random number generator was not kind to quarterback this week. Drew Lock does not pass the eye test, and he certainly didn't pass the good points test with only 9. Brandon Ayuk, he had a good day with 13, and Jason Sanders, the kicker, with 14, but not a lot else to speak of, and obviously the injuries have really taken their toll on this team, and now that they're 5-5, they're going to have to do something quickly to turn this around. History of this matchup, all-time Iksan are 3-5 against Pat. Ben obviously held the wildcard for so long, he's lost it. Do you see any way he can reclaim it?
I'm not sure he can control the slide at this point, and I think the reason why he can't do that is that without McCaffrey, without a QB that isn't really a number 1, then you've got yourself a problem, because you can't score consistent points every week. And you look at the kind of players that he's playing, the likes of, I know that Bernard's done all right, but this week, Bernard against the Steelers didn't like it. Look at Fulgham against the Giants, didn't like it anyway. Waller hasn't been the same guy this year as he was last year. The whole Raiders offense isn't that great. Outside of Josh Jacobs, I think Ayuk's been a great pickup, and I think Jerry Jeudy will be a good pickup. We saw what he could do against a trash secondary. So, but it doesn't help again when the guy who the guy who seems to be the number one QB in Denver. I think he's going to get there, Drew Lock. It doesn't look awful. But obviously with 4 picks, that might not go my way there. But you say outside of this week, he's done all right. And obviously now he's massively injured. The value of him goes down as well. And you look at the bench. I mean, Andrews was doing well from earlier on in the year, and obviously without Carson, who may come back this week, and Gaskin, who was a very good fill-in. It's just so depleted. But yeah, I don't think he's going to get back there. I just think there's going to be a bit of a few games slide going on here. Now that the reserves are depleted until McCaffrey comes back and tries to salvage the year. Mm-hmm. Whilst with Pat, Ross was an absolutely fantastic pickup. You can't say anything other than that. And I think that he'll remain as number one for a long time, because you look at where the Titans are, and they've got some really tough matchups coming on. But yeah, his 3 pickups off the waivers: Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson, Justin Jefferson, all coming good for him there, and the Colts D coming good for him there as well. And that's it. He just needs some of the supporting cast to do it more regularly and more often, and fire up Michael Thomas. Hopefully, James will be able to do that. And yeah, once he gets, there's 3 guys on the bench, Mixon, Montgomery, and Samuel back, it looks a different kind of team. So yeah, I think that Pat is flying on the radar a little bit here. I know it didn't take a lot to beat Ben this week, but he still scored 94 points, which a lot of the league didn't, and that's not without his main guys on the bench, or indeed his 2 real stud receivers firing. Mm-hmm. So watch this space. I think that Pat's still got some room to grow.
Sure. And for Ben, again, reflecting a bit, obviously he was inducted into the Hall of Fame this year for his GM acumen, and we're not going to talk about his draft because his season has obviously been wrecked by injuries, and you can't help that. But it's very ironic that he gets inducted for a 7-year stretch, I think it was, of never having worse than a losing record. That has not looked in so much danger as it does now. It's out of his control in the sense that the injuries have just mounted. And he's done, I think, to be fair, a very good job of even getting a couple of wins in the midst of that and finding players to get points. But yeah, it's the times are hard for Ixan at the moment.
Indeed, can't ever take that number 1 pick.
Yeah. The Nathwani rule has backfired. Maybe it's like the Madden curse.
Well, that's it. It seems that way at the moment.
Okay, so that was all of last week's games then. So if we go and take a look at the standings now, starting with the Southampton division, that has a new leader. You Are Gold takes hold of that once again with the loss by Bedetonators. They're hot on their tail and do still have a points advantage at 5-5. Behind You Are Gold 6-4. Pakistan, they're one behind Ollie at 4-6, and with the Tugfards bringing up the rear, they're at 3-7. Going to the the Portsmouth division, Fortify still leading that up, and the league at 7-3. Look very well positioned at the moment for a spot in the playoffs, and we have a new wildcard team in bucking the trend with Ixan losing. And Bucking the Trend winning, and Ollie also losing. That has allowed Bucking the Trend to take the wildcard spot for now at 6-4. Ixan, then they drop out of that wildcard spot for the first time in a long time. They're at 5-5 now, and Ben Necessity's at the bottom there at 4-6. And in the Winchester division, the Dream Team still holding on to that despite losing their last 2 games, but their lead has shrunk from multiple games to now only 1 over Mahomes Under the Hammer and Tom's Tyrants, both at 5-5 with their respective wins, and Gridiron Gang there at the bottom with 4-6 as well. Looking at the breakdown, Ross's team perfect 11-0 obviously with their high score last week, and they now sit atop this, I believe, along with Tom's Tyrants, who are tied first after their 9-2 week. My dad's team at third, despite having some good weeks. They obviously find the record does not match this statistic. The Dream Team have slipped down a bit. They had a 3-8 and a 0-11 the week before, so they're struggling at the moment. Mike's team in 5th there and so on and so on. On the coach ranking, Ben's still at the top, not surprising as his bench is mostly occupied by people who cannot walk. Ross's team, they were at the top, but yeah, we say Ross's team hasn't had much depth the last couple of weeks. Some points on the bench there, probably just Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Ben Necessities as well, another one of those teams that's not had a lot of depth. Mike, I think probably of the teams in this top tier, doing the best job coaching-wise. They did leave 20 points on the bench last week, mind, and then you obviously get to the middle ground. And the usual people at the bottom there. And you throw that all together for the true ranking. Ross's team still at the top, but not in a playoff spot at the moment. Viv's team there in second. Tom's Tyrants in third. Ben Necessities in fourth. This is a very weird year. Usually this marries up quite nicely with the playoff teams, but we have Tom's Tyrants, Ross's team, and my dad's team all in the top 5, neither of which in a playoff berth currently. But then you've got Forge Flyers, You Are Gold, in 6th and 7th who do. So make of that what you will. But I think your team is probably underrated in this category, to be fair to your team, Chris. And in terms of overall milestones this week, only one Ixan notched their 70th career loss last week. So congrats to you, Ben. And yeah, that brings...
70s club.
Yeah, finally. And that is it for the milestone selling stats. Watch out for Tom's Power Rankings article that has been dropping on Sunday, so I imagine it will again this week. And we will mosey on to week 11, and as I say, it's playoffs or bust for a handful of teams now in the LOC, and obviously everyone else needs to keep the wins for either a chance or to hold on. Who are we going with for the marquee matchup this week, Chris? We have Gridiron Gang against You Are Gold, Forge Flyers against Bedetonators, Bucking the Trend against the Tuckfarts, the Dream Team against Padistan, Ixan against Mahomes Under the Hammer, and Ben Necessities against Tom's Tyrants.
Well, that's it. I think.
It's tricky because there isn't one game here. All of these games at this point obviously have playoff implications of one or the other. I suppose if you're talking in terms of teams directly competing for playoffs at this stage, gosh, I don't even know. It's but maybe you look at Ben versus Ross as that those two teams are looking to keep up in the wildcard race. Other than that, it's maybe Forge Flyers, Bedetonators, obviously your team looking to stay on top of the pile. Meanwhile, Bedetonators maybe looking to pull you back into the wildcard scrap and keep up in the division themselves. I don't know where you go.
Listen, I'm trying to think of who we haven't had for a marquee matchup for a while. But do you know what? The one fixture that drew my eye initially was Dream Team Pakistan for reasons I cannot quite fathom. But Viv's on a slide, Pat's on the way up. This could be a really pivotal game, I think, for both these guys' seasons.
Sure, let's do it. Marquee matchup for week 11. It is the Dream Team against Pakistan. Week 11's marquee matchup, the Dream Team take on Pakistan. The Dream Team leading the Winchester division currently, but after dropping 2 in a row, are now in great peril of losing control of that division. And on the other side for Pakistan, it is playoffs for them. They are 4-6. They simply cannot lose another game, and even that might not be enough. So the stakes are down, the chips are there as well. And the Dream Team are projected to take this one currently. 90-82, looking down the lineup for Viv. Ezekiel Elliott returns from the bye. Damian Harris comes into the lineup too, in favour of Duke Johnson and JD McKissick. On the other side of the ball for Pat, I don't believe there are any changes at the moment, but depending on Mixon's health, unclear. Who back this week could come in over Josh Kelly, maybe Amari Cooper as well. So the history of this matchup all time, the Dream Team are 6-1 against Pakistan. Chris, take it away.
6-1 against Pakistan. He needs all the faith, all the record to get this right because he has to turn the tide on these 2 losses right now. And I think for a team that was earlier on in the year very fancied to get to the playoffs, really, really fancied. He has Tom steaming up behind him. He has Ross in the same division. So you've got 3 competitive teams that only one of them is really going to get out. I think the wild card could well come from this division as well. Bearing in mind the quality of it. So yeah, Viv's got to get this right this week. And I think that just on paper, it could well work because, he's playing Arizona, Russell Wilson this week. He's going to want to get right from that garbage game that he played against Los Angeles on Sunday. It should be a bit of a shootout because Arizona at the moment are particularly high scoring. And I think that there's no way that he can score less than 20 points in this game. So that's going to set him right. Zeke playing the Vikings and Harris playing the Texans. Again, get right games for both those backs. Harris has been looked like the guy in that offense.
Yeah, he's been the lead dog.
Yeah. For sure. And against the Texans, who've just been run over all year by running backs, I think that's great. You've still got number 1 receivers in Landry. Godwin's not going away, albeit in a reasonably tough matchup. But Brady's come back into form, albeit maybe not looking his way. And say there's a lot of guys in that offense now that he's got to do. And so it would be interesting to see if Kareem Hunt can carry on those consistent carries, albeit with Chubb still in there. Whether or not touchdowns will stop. Although saying that, there wasn't that many touchdowns anyway, even when he was in there by himself. On the other side, obviously Roethlisberger's been the guy holding this team together, but if he's going to do it this week, he's going to do it against the Jags. Should do. Same as Michael Thomas. If he's going to get going, he's going to get going against the Falcons because they've been dreadful. Kelly against the Jets, love it. Deontay Johnson against the Jags with Roethlisberger, love it. Don't like AJ Brown against the Ravens, but they've not been entirely non-susceptible to receivers this year. So and say Justin Jefferson against Dallas, another good matchup. So Nath, I tell you, there's some matchups across the board here. They really are. They really are. The QBs, I think, could even themselves out. Skill players, it's pretty much of a muchness. But do I like Landry? Do I like Godwin as much as I like the upside of AJ Brown? Deontay Johnson's been playing well, and Justin Jefferson against the Cowboys. I can't say that I do. And then defenses at the bottom. Colts versus Green Bay. Browns versus Philly. Carson Wentz got sacked a lot this year. Browns no slouch. And the Colts have been great so far, but against Green Bay, it's going to be one of their toughest tests, I think. So that could be where the difference is. So I don't know. I like Pat's team this week. I really do. But I think that the Russell Wilson factor, you cannot look past that right now. Even though Ben's in good form, you can't look past Russell Wilson against Arizona. On Thursday night, wildness can happen. And Viv should be able to stop the slide. But it's going to be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised if Pat was very competitive and perhaps won it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go with Pat. I agree with your point. Like when Russell Wilson is cooking, the Dream Team usually has a good day, but I don't really think we've seen too many great weeks from the Dream Team this year, and that is just because the supporting cast. I agree, this is probably the best it's looked in a while on name value, but that's still not really translating through necessarily. And for Pakistan, I thought it was going to be last week 10, they would actually finally be able to field the strongest team. Still wasn't able to happen because of Joe Mixon. He could be back this week. I think if he is, he obviously comes in over Josh Kelly, and I would say he's an absolute shoo-in to win this game. I think if Joe Mixon comes back, just because, as you said, the quality of the players and their matchups are just ridiculous. And we've seen Pat this year, a team that very much flatters to deceive at times, but when they're on, by God, they're on. And this has the shapings of an on week for them. So I'm going to go Pakistan in this one to keep it interesting for himself, and then drag the Dream Team back into that playoff scrap. Our next game then, it is Iksan against Mahomes under the hammer. Two wildcard teams, they really need to beat each other in this one. Iksan take on Mahomes under the hammer, both 5-5. Iksan coming in on a 3-game slide. Russell's team coming in off of a win Yeah, you figure whoever loses, it's going to be an uphill battle after that. Whoever wins has a pretty good shot, at least, of making it interesting. Looking down the lineups for Ixan, Chris Carson is in the lineup at the moment. It is a short week, but Carroll was, let's say, optimistic that he could return this week. Outside of that, I think Mark Andrews has come up into the lineup as well, over Ayuk, who is on a bye as well. And I'm not sure who else has left the team. They're probably not on the team anymore for Chris Carson. On the other side of the ball, Ross's team, obviously unchanged at the moment. Excuse me, I should have said the projections. Is that right? 72 to 67 in favour of Ross. Okay then. And Ross has two players on a bye. Diggs and Tyler Bass, so you figure Valor Scantling maybe finally gets the call up, albeit not in the best of matchups. And insert kicker here. So there you go. It looks like an interesting one on paper, Chris. In the history of this matchup, all time, Ixan 6-3 against Ross. This is a very, very interesting game in terms of the playoff race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Drew Lock's probably going to be out on Sunday as well. So if we account for that, he's going to pick up either one. If it were me, I'd pick up either one of Cam Newton or Kirk Cousins, who Cam's playing in Houston, who are hilariously bad, as we know. And Cousins play in Dallas, who are pretty much in the same league. And
he went with only the week previous, don't forget.
Indeed. So he might choose to go back there. But I think Cam against Houston's a really solid play. I really do. I think that could be great. But then again, Ben doesn't listen to a word that I say about him on this podcast. He does. So you crack on, man. That's it. But don't play Drew Lock. That's it. Listen to that. Look, yeah, we've seen these ragtag bunch get in and get gone before, but I don't see how it's going to happen. Fordham, Judy, especially without a QB. Difficult for Waller against Kansas. Difficult for Andrews against Tennessee. Yeah, Arizona for Carson should be all right if he's well. And the Patriots D against Houston, you'd like to think would have a decent day, but you just don't know with that unit at the moment, and what Deshaun Watson can do at home. On the other side, it's not looking much better. I mean, you look at the Packers, and they're probably the most difficult matchup so far, playing the Colts in Indianapolis, and they say we've seen them stifle better offenses than that. But there aren't many this year that can argue with that. Say you're playing Kamara and Murray against Atlanta. I think Kamara could have a really big day. And the Chargers playing the Jets, good matchup there too. But if you account for the fact that he's got to bring, as you say, potentially Valor Scantling in, not in the best matchup, or Keelan Cole, in equally a bad matchup, or Lev Bell in, not enough. Actually, he couldn't do that anyway because he's playing three backs. So, oh well, never mind. And bringing Randy Bullock in isn't the worst thing. Randy Bullock's still a great kicker. I mean, fancy kicker wise, he's up there. Or has been for the first half of the year anyway. So I think that's not too bad. But yeah, I think this is a real slug match. I really don't like it, but I do like the fact that Ross can call on Rodgers, Jones, Evans, and Kamara, whilst Ben can't call on anyone of that sort of ilk. And I think that's where he's going to get him over the line, even if they're in duff matchups.
Yeah, I think what you said, don't start Drew Lock. I think if that even needs to be said, then something's gone wrong. Because that should just be de facto, don't start Drew Lock. And that just kind of summarises what Ixan's season has been. Constant fluctuation, constant, not just rotating of players, but bringing new players in and out, and it's just not been going for them. And you would be crazy. That I don't want to say they're the Jets of the LOC at the moment, because I think that's a disrespect to Ixan. But if you had to, you look at one team on paper in the LOC and say, which team would you want to play on a given week? It's probably Ben, just because it's just been so decimated. And you look at Ross's team, it's the complete opposite. It's the complete model of being settled. And yeah, there's no change to that. So yeah, I think unfortunately for Ben, Ross will take this one. But if anyone could summon some random players together and possibly get the upset, I think it's Ben, because he's been doing a good job, as I say, of amending on the fly. But yeah, I think you've got to go for Ross on paper at least. Our next game then is another key one for the playoff race. Bare Necessities against Tom's Tyrants. Bare Necessities take on each other in week 11. Tom's Tyrants 5-5 on a 5-game winning streak, but they still need to keep it going to get back into the playoffs race. Or keep up in the playoff race. Meanwhile, Bare Necessities, they are one of the playoff or bust teams at this point at 4-6. The projections currently have Tom's Tyrants as the favourite, 77-61, but there's going to be some changes on either side if we start with Tom's Tyrants. Obviously they are unchanged at the moment. Alan Robinson is on a bye. The kicker they picked up is not slotted in, so give them another bumper up to 85 for the kicker, and then let's say it's probably Todd Gurley coming in, which is another 8.5, so they're at about 93 points, let's call it, projected wise. For Bare Necessities, they've got a couple of players on bye, unchanged at the moment as well, Josh Allen and Cole Beasley. Travis Kelce will come back in, so that's a 12 right there. And then Derek Carr they've picked up as the replacement. So I believe their projection is going to be about 93 as well. So on balance, projected to be pretty close. History of this matchup all time. Bare Necessities 5-6 against Tom's Tyrants. Can Tom extend the streak to 6? Chris?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think we probably overstate Dalvin Cook's influence in the team, in your dad's team. And I think that playing Dallas is obviously a good time to play them right now. He's obviously in great form. And we've seen, not last week, but the 2 weeks previous to that, what he can do when he's just allowed to do his thing. And you could probably you can account for 30 and 40 points in those 2 weeks. There's absolutely no reason to say he can't do that again. But it's the everybody else that I'm a little bit concerned about. I think Melvin Gordon might well be leaning on a bit more, especially if the QB is a reserve QB there in Denver. So we've seen Jonathan Taylor. Do they really trust him? Parker's in a good matchup, but Tua playing there this time of the year, and any team from Miami going to Denver this time of the year, that is worlds apart from where they're from. So that's going to take some acclimatizing. The Dolphins D have been great recently, and I think especially against any reserve QB for Denver that Denver can bring out. But you look at the other side, and you just look at that QB, great matchup. Justin Herbert plays the Jets. Keenan Allen plays the Jets. Just got gold mine written all over it. It really does. Sanders and Gibson have been solid. I don't know why Gibson's projected that low. I know. He's been really good in the last couple of weeks, and I think that he is the number one back there. Say what you want about McKissick, but he's a different kind of player. Adams is playing in a very difficult matchup. He's going to be entirely reliant on how Rodgers can get the ball away, whether or not they just choose to run it. But India proved that they against the best backs that they can stop that. I think the Bucs D is a good matchup there against LA. You bring Younghoe Koo in. He's been very solid all year. He's kicking in a dome. This time of the year really matters. And if you want to bring in Gurley, you could bring in Ahmed. You could even bring in Gronk if you really wanted to. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference, because I do think that Tom's Tyrants have got everything they need to win this game. So you can't tell me that swapping Josh Allen for Derek Carr is good.
No, certainly not. No.
They've only played in prime time on Sunday, but Derek Carr started very well, and then for some reason since the midpoint of the season he's taken a bit of a slide. They've relied on the running game a lot more, I guess, because Jacobs is a bit fitter perhaps than they expected. So I think that he's going to have to rely on Cook particularly to get him to a credible score, and then a lot from the supporting cast, and yeah, if you're replacing, Alan with Derek Carr, and let's say you got to bring Kelsey back in, I don't think it's going to get quite to what he needs to get to, but yeah, it could be all down to those charges over there that gives him that unassailable lead.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think what my dad's seen with Derek Carr is obviously when they played the Chiefs before, they pulled off the upset of the century, the 30-point game. Chiefs coming off a bye. Can you see that coming again? I sure as hell can't.
Nope.
No. And I think that pretty much sums it up. It is the Dalvin Cook struggle bus for bare necessities, and I think around that it's going to be struggling all right. And Tom Starnes, look, they've won 5 games in a row, just in absolute scintillating form, and no signs of slowing down. Not really any. Probably the worst matchup there is Devontae Adams against the Colts, but it's Devontae Adams, so who cares? It's Tom Starnes all the way to make the playoff race interesting and maybe put the final nail in the coffin for bare necessities season. Our next game then, it is Gridiron Gang against You Are Gold. You Are Gold! They took control of the Southampton division last week and they'll be looking to keep it on their 2-game win streak. Meanwhile, Gridiron Gang, playoffs are bust time for them now at 4-6. They are projected to win this one though, and maybe stay in the race, 93-84. Looking down the lineups of Gridiron Gang, Matt Ryan comes in for Drew Brees, who is obviously injured now, but playing New Orleans. DeAndre Swift comes into the lineup after his tremendous week. And otherwise unchanged, he comes in over Antonio Brown. On the other side of the ball, unchanged at the moment, I believe. There will be a new defense required for You Are Gold. None on the roster as yet. In terms of injuries, obviously Breeze is out. Golladay, I would colour me doubtful that he plays this week with that hip issue. Drake obviously did suit up last week, so should do again this week. History of this matchup all time. Gridiron Gang are 4-1 against You Are Gold. Will You Are Gold have sole ownership of the Southampton division after this week, or will it go back to joint, do you think, Chris?
I think that you've got a great chance here, and I think the reason why that is you look at the some of the matchups on the other side. I say I don't like Cup against Tampa. I don't like Tim Patrick ever, and especially with as we talked about, if Drew Lock's out, that's it. The value of him goes through the floor. So he's got to get. The Bears D have been great for him this year, but he's got to get a new D. That's it. Got to get a new D. So, who's on the waivers? Well, looking at here, who would you pick up off the waivers? I think you'd probably pick up the Bengals, maybe playing Washington. You might give that a go. You might pick up. Who else will you might pick up here?
It's pretty thin this week. I spent $15 on the Vikings, which felt a bit gross.
You might pick Broncos, possibly playing Miami at home. That you might. I don't know. That is scraping the barrel, but it's been done. But you can't understand the fact that Murray's playing Seattle, Thielen's playing Dallas, Chubb's back in the lineup. Drake, if he's playing, is also playing Seattle as well. So there's room to score there. Whilst with your team, obviously Matt Ryan comes back in, he's playing New Orleans in New Orleans. I think that probably suits his style. New Orleans aren't any slouches by any means, but Matt Ryan is a guy you can pretty much plug and play and expect to get 18 to 25 points every week, especially with the talent that's around him. Davis and Swift, they're going to be 2 number 1 guys. Davis playing Detroit, I like it. They're playing in the same game, so and Swift, we saw what he could do last week as the number 1 guy. You look down the list a bit more. Woods playing in prime time. He's got to have a bounce back at some point, but he say maybe not necessarily against that defense. Same with Fuller. He's good that he's playing at home. I think that's going to benefit him. He's definitely very boom or bust, and also very weather dependent this time of the year as well. And Tyler Lockett, questionable, but
I should have said the knee injury.
Whether he plays or not is still up in the air. But if he does, then that's going to suit him in the way that they're playing. So the Vikings, you've spot started quite rightly, and Will Lutz has been tremendous for the last couple of years. Obviously, if Lockett doesn't go, then it's no real biggie for you. You can bring in guys like Antonio Brown, Marvin Jones. You might even bring in Crowder, maybe. But yeah, I think this is probably a tough one on paper. Than it is in reality. I think the total points down there are obviously a bit skewed because there's no defense, so it's going to be closer than we anticipate. But yeah, I think that you are going to be reliant on Murray, Thielen, and to an extent Chubb. Whilst you're going to have to hope your top three and Lockett come good on the day, and the Vikings steamrollers Andy Dalton. But there's so much question marks over the supporting cast of You Are Gold. You know, the likes of Drake, whether or not he'll see the type of production that we expect. You know, Cup in a bad matchup and Patrick with a bad QB against, you know, guys like, Fuller, Lockett, big guy, big play players. Swift, who's coming off a great week and perhaps more. It's too close to call. I'm going to go with your team, just.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tricky one to call. Just for my team, again, are probably a lot like Pedestan, flat as to deceive. On paper, it's all there. But for one reason or another, just doesn't always come through. And then You Are Gold, like you say, they are pretty top heavy, but they do have some guys in the supporting cast who absolutely can put up the points. So. Yeah, picking this one, oh god, it's tough. It is really tough. I think I'll lean You Are Gold just on the basis that they do have some guys who are just capable of dropping, 20 plus point weeks. Probably more so than I've probably got more guys you'd think who would get maybe 10 to 20 more reliably. But no, a very tough one. It's going to be interesting to see who wins it for sure. And a lot of implications for the playoff race in that one as well. Our next game then is Forge Flyers against Bedetonators. Forge Flyers take on Bedetonators in Week 11. League-leading Forge Flyers and Portsmouth Division-leading Forge Flyers set out to keep that title for at least another week, while Bedetonators look to reclaim the crown of the Southampton Division. They are currently projected to do so, 93-89. Looking down the lineups for Bedetonators, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire comes in favour of Brandon Cooks. Julio Jones comes back in off of bye, as does Calvin Ridley over James Robinson and Jalen Rager, and T. Higgins comes in over Tyler Boyd. So a lot of change as well. Bedetonators, Calvin Ridley questionable. Obviously, he had that foot sprain. Time will tell if he suits up at the moment. For Forge Flyers, Lamar Jackson comes in over Jared Goff, who is now looking for a new job in the LOC. And who else? Naeem Hines off the waiver wire comes in over... help me, Chris. Have you dropped the guy? I can't.
I'm voting for Mike Williams.
Mike Williams. Sorry, Mike Williams. So, history of this matchup all time. Bedetonators are it's even 7-7. So, Chris, take it away. I think that it's going to be a really even game here, and I'm looking forward to it because, for all that both these teams have. I think that my team this week has got some real plum matchups, particularly for Connor, Kirk, McLaurin, Hines. You would bring Mike Williams in. You could bring DJ Moore in. There's a lot of good matchups there. And I think for me, the real challenge at the moment is to try and get all those guys who are firing on the same week in the same team, which is a challenge. Which is a nice challenge, but a challenge nonetheless. And so the Steelers as well, playing Jacksonville. I like it all, but Ollie's definitely got those guys that, as you say, can get to those higher echelons of points, and playing Jackson and Watson, I think will probably cancel each other out on the day. But Edmonds against Seattle, he could be the number one back. Clyde's definitely the number one back, albeit 1A in a committee perhaps. Julio and Calvin Ridley. If Calvin Ridley's can't go for any reason, then perhaps you bring
Perhaps you bring Robinson in. Perhaps you bring Cooks in. I think Cook's probably the better player, especially the QB that he's got. T. Higgins has been great over the last 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Buck's the number 1 kicker in football, and Joe Burrow gets sacked a lot. So playing the football team defense is decent. So yeah, I think the projections are maybe a little bit high for the players on Ollie's team, but it's not to say that they're not going to be able to get there and exceed that. But I do think that his week is always based around whether or not the Falcons do well, and they are playing New Orleans. New Orleans, as you say in the last one, is no easy feat. But if they can get it together and those guys, put up, 70 yards and a touchdown each, then yeah, that could be enough really to get them over the line. But not to say that my team's not going to do well this week. Look at the names in there and look at the guys in good matchups. But I don't know. It's it. When Ollie's booming, he's booming. But when he's busting, he's busting. And it's very difficult to know. Whilst my team is very middle of the road, I think he's probably good for 85 to 100 points a week and more on a really good one. So yeah, I mean, do I back my team? Every time I back my team, I lose by a massive amount. So I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's another tricky game. I think much like my game against the other Ollie, for like you said, the similar reasons. Yours probably not like a ceiling puncher, but definitely has a nice high floor. Ollie's team, as you said, yeah, it wouldn't surprise you if they didn't do much in a week, and equally wouldn't surprise you if they went and dropped 150. God, and where do you go? You've got really nice matchups, and even Henry's against Baltimore. We saw how the Patriots ran roughshod over them last week. I don't think that's an issue at all. For Ollie, I think the matchups are okay. I wouldn't say they're great, but perhaps the star power is a little bit more. Yeah, it's a tough one to call. I think I'll go with your team just based on you do have the volume there with Henry and Connor. And McLaurin, they're all going to get peppered with touches and targets. For Ollie, he's got the same thing between Jones and Ridley, but outside of that, it's a question mark. So I think that's all I can split this one on. But yeah, certainly either team could definitely take this one. Our final game of the week then, it is bucking the trend against the Tuckfards. The newly anointed wildcard team, bucking the trend on a 3-game win streak, takes on the league's coldest team, the Tuckfards, at 3-7 on a 5-game losing streak. It really, really is last chance saloon. Even if they win out the Tuckfards, it may not be enough. Meanwhile, bucking the trend are obviously going to want to keep holding on to that wildcard spot, and they are projected to do so. 88-72. Looking down the lineups for bucking the trend, Tyreek Hill comes in off a bye, Jacoby Myers comes in from the waiver wire, and Kalen Ballage comes in as well, all in favour of Wayne Gorman, Leonard Fournette, and I'm going to guess Robbie Anderson. On the other side, unchanged at the moment, Mahomes will almost certainly come back in for Teddy Bridgewater, and Devin Singletary's on a bye, so probably going to bring in, I would say, Chase Claypool. So we'll get a bit better for the Tuckfards, we'll see. History of this matchup, bucking the trend, are 1-1 against the Tuckfards. Chris, take it away.
Yeah, I think that if obviously Phil's got one number one thing challenge this week, change his team, which has been challenging for the last 3, and he's going to want it because bringing in Mahomes and bringing in Claypool is going to make that team infinitely better. Do I think that's enough to get him over the line? Not with when you got Emmanuel Sanders and AJ Green in the team, albeit Sanders, if it's going to happen this week. Otherwise, great matchups. That's it. Hopkins, Smith-Schuster, Claypool if he comes in, great matchups. That's it. Daniel Carson's been decent all year as a kicker. But yeah, AJ Green there just against Washington, there's just something about it that I don't quite like there. On the other side, free Jameis. Come on, if Jameis gets number 1 start, he has to get in there. This is the game for him. If this is not the game for him, then there's no point even trying to analyse matchups in this one, because it's just plumb. And I don't think Tua's going to do it up on a mountain. He might do it on the beach, but not up a mountain. And then you look at everything going down. Yeah, Tyreek's in there, Mahomes on the other side is going to cancel each other out. Josh Jacobs is in the team, playing extremely well. Myers playing Houston. He looks like the only credible guy who's going to catch a ball on that team. Metcalf playing Arizona, love it. Ballage against the Jets, love it. McManus kicking at home against Miami, love it. Rams playing Tampa, don't like it quite so much. But that's it. We're all allowed our weak spots, and I think that Mike has significantly fewer weak spots than Phil does. I think that playing Sanders and Green is a massive risk. Playing two Pittsburgh receivers right now could be a massive risk, and the only thing you can rely on really is Mahomes and Hopkins, and possibly the Ravens D if they don't get run over by Derrick Henry having a good day. So in for Mike. Unfortunate for Phil, but I think the writing was on the wall there from the start.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to take long on this one. Tuck Fods just looked toothless in comparison to a pretty ferocious Bucking the Trend team. So, Bucking the Trend to take this one for me as well. So, that is the Week 11 previews. Obviously, this time next week, we may have a bit more clarity on the playoff race. It will certainly be getting closer to the wire. And before we go, of course, John has now arrived, and he will be chaperoning us into Debate Corner. So, John, please take it away. Thank you, John. So, for Debate Corner this week, the question is, will anyone reach double-digit wins? We usually have one team reach double-digit wins. Will we have one this year? There are 4 teams that can do it. 3 of them are 6-4. You were the only one at 7-3. So it would either require one of the or more of the 6-4 teams winning out, or you winning at least 3 of your final games.
I think it's going to be a really difficult one this year, just because of how close the league is. I was saying this to Mike earlier on, is that I feel as though the league is so close this year, and it's been exciting all year. There's not one division where someone's romping away with it, and even if somebody did romp away with it at one point, they've sort of been reeled in, or it's been the second and the third teams in that division have been there or thereabouts. So I think as a result of that, because every division's close, you can't necessarily get wipeouts over one division rival, as it were. I don't think there's actually a super weak team in this league. I know Phil's team is sort of running on empty at the moment, but otherwise, outside of that, I think everyone puts up a fight every week. And we saw it with weeks like last week, where the points totals were low on average, and once that happens, it's a real turkey shoot as to who can win. So I think that it will be very difficult for anybody to win out of those on 6-4 right now. I don't think there is one team there that you can really say to yourself, that's going to happen. My team included, I think they've definitely got a couple more losses in that, particularly if you come against some teams in some good weeks, which I clearly haven't done so far. I don't think so. I think it's going to be like the 2018 season, where we had a load of guys on 7-4 at the end of the year and scrapping out for the final day as to who makes the playoffs based on points scored, and that is fun. Yeah, no,
I think you're right. I think it's asking a bit too much for any of the 6-4 teams to win out. I don't think any of them are, shall we say, infallible. They are varying degrees of quite good, but I wouldn't peg any one of them to win out for 4 games. For your team, if we just look at your upcoming schedule, Bedenes, Benesestes, Padastan, and Ixan, probably not the toughest schedule you could face. I'd say certainly. I bet Ben's probably maybe at that point, who knows? He actually might be a bit stronger. So I don't think that's a very necessarily easy schedule either. So I think I tend to agree. If anyone's going to do it, it will obviously be your team, as you could only drop one and do it. But I agree. I don't think anyone will. So certainly set up for a close finish, and that does bring us to the end of another LOC Report. Thank you for joining us again, Chris.
Hey, welcome, Sid. It's been good to be here.
Yeah, always good to have you on there. So have a good rest of your week. Best of luck in your matchups in this weekend, unless you're playing me, of course. We'll be here next week. Goodbye.